Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out at the range with a handgun most of you have probably seen or heard of before. It's nothing special. It's a Sig Sauer P226. It's been around since around 1984-85. But this handgun has an interesting history behind it, and that's what I want to share with you this afternoon. This handgun draws a lot of its design inspirations from a handgun that was developed in Germany during the Second World War. And that's what I want to show off this afternoon. Now, the particular variant that I have here with me this afternoon is made in the United States. This is a Mark 25 variant, which was adopted by the U.S. Navy, and of course fires the 9mm NATO round. Speaking of which, I have some 124 grain Freedom munitions, ball ammo in this gun. We're going to fire this gun first, then I'm going to break out its predecessor that this handgun drew a lot of its inspiration from. You should find this interesting, so stick around, guys. The handgun I want to show you guys this afternoon is the J P Sauer Sohn 38H. H denotes hammer fired. Even though this does not have an exposed hammer, this handgun does have an internal hammer system inside of it. Now, this handgun has features that made it unique for its time period. It does have a magazine safety, which we did see, of course, in the Browning High Power, which does have a magazine safety. Later war production guns deleted that, but this handgun does have a magazine safety. It has what we call an American-style magazine release, but again, that's nothing really truly new because the Walther PP and PPK series of pistols had that style of release. What makes this gun unique, especially for its time period, is this lever right here. Now, if you're familiar with the Sig Sauer P226, you'll know that this lever is a decocking lever. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and check and make sure that the weapon's safe. And in pulling the slide to the rear and releasing it, you'll notice that the trigger's in the cocked position. The hammer's back. Just like a P226, I can reach up and pull this lever down and safely decock the pistol on a live round. Now I can carry it double action. That first shot's going to be a heavy 12-pound or so double action. It'll cycle, and then it'll become a single action until you decock it again. Now here's something else that's interesting. The gun is decocked, the hammer is forward, and we'll show you this when we field strip the weapon. But if I push this lever down again, I recock the pistol. Notice now the trigger's in the semi-automatic mode. It's no longer in double action mode. So you pull the trigger, single action mode I should say, not semi-automatic, single action mode, and the gun will fire with a much lighter trigger pull. If I depress this lever once again, it goes back to double action, requiring a much heavier trigger pull. Some of the other features of the handgun is a loaded chamber indicator, which is just a pin that protrudes from the rear end of the pistol. When you have a live round in the chamber, you can run your hand across the back of the pistol in a holster and know that the weapon is hot or ready to fire. So we're going to talk about this little handgun. We'll field strip it. It's just a simple blowback design, chambered in 7.65 Browning, which is 32 ACP. It holds 8 rounds in its single stack magazine. We'll break it down, show you what the gun looks like on the inside, but what I want to show you up close is this lever mechanism, which was directly transferred over to the Sig Sauer P226. Now, how are these two joined? Well, this was made by J P Sauer Sons, Sauer. In 1979, a Swiss company called Sig joined up with Sauer, and they produced a Sig Sauer P220, which was a 45 caliber ACP pistol, which was one of the first Sig Sauer pistols imported into the United States. I believe it was actually imported by Browning at the time. In 1984, Sig Sauer developed the P226 to compete for the M9 trials. So that's how we got to the P226. So this handgun is a direct relative, let's say, to the current generation P226 handgun, and that's what I thought you guys might find interesting. So let's do a little bit of shooting with this little guy. I'll also talk about the safety lever on the slide here once we get into it a little bit more, but I have some Fiocchi 32 ACP ball ammunition loaded into its 8-round magazine. It just inserts like any other handgun, and now you do have a safety lever here. Red, this little red dot means fire. That means it's safe. I'm going to go ahead and charge the weapon. It now has a round in the chamber. If I push this lever down, I've decocked the pistol, okay? And now here on the rear end of it, you can see and feel that pin sticking out, so I know that the weapon's loaded. I can put the weapon on safe, and if I pull the trigger while it's on safe, nothing happens. If I put the lever on fire, now the gun will fire double action for the first shot. That is, unless I elect to press that lever one more time and make it single action. So let's fire a couple rounds out of the gun, and then I will decock it and recock it for you here really quick. Okay, so I fired 3 rounds out of the weapon. You can see that it's in a single action mode. I'm going to go ahead and decock the pistol. Now that first shot's going to be double action. Now I'm going to recock it by pressing the lever again. See that trigger drawn to the rear? The hammer's now drawn backwards. And now I can finish out the magazine in just simple single action mode. All right, and the 38H does not lock open on the last shot fired. We'll go ahead and make sure that the weapon's safe. I can also check by running my finger across the rear. Drop that hammer, make it safe. Now, let's do a little bit more shooting with this handgun, and then let's tear it down and take a look at it on the inside and see how this thing works. Here I have the P226 sitting here. Its magazine's out of it. It is loaded, but I'll go ahead and double check, make sure the chamber's empty, and lock the slide to the rear. To lock the slide to the rear on the Sig, you have a separate lever. This is your slide lock, and this is your decocker. So with the Sig, if I want to decock it, just like the 38H, I push this down, and the external hammer is safely lowered on a live round if there were one in the pistol. To disassemble the P226, I'm just going to lock it to the rear using a slide stop, rotate the takedown lever to its downward position, and then just hit the slide release and pull, and the gun field strips. Very simple and very conventional by modern standards. Set the lower aside, pull the guide rod and spring out, and it's typical Browning action, and the P226 is disassembled. Now let's take a look at the 38H. Again, here's its 8-round magazine. It is loaded. It's out of the pistol. It's the only one I have for the gun. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that the pistol's clear. I am not able to lock the slide to the rear. This handgun does not have a slide stop or slide release, but the weapon's clear. To disassemble it, just inside the trigger guard, there's a little tab, and it's on both sides of the gun. And you just simply pinch this tab and pull it down. Now you can see the tab's extended. I've just unlocked the pistol so that I can pull the slide to the rear and lift it up and off, much like you would a PP series pistol by Walther. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the slide to the rear, lift up, and the gun comes apart. Set the slide down, recoil spring comes off the barrel, and that is the field stripping for the 38H. Now let's take a look at that trigger mechanism. There's the internal hammer of the pistol. When I hit the decocking lever, you can see the hammer come up. When the trigger's pulled, the hammer falls forward, hits the firing pin, ignites the 32 ACP round, and starts the whole action of firing the bullet, cycling the action, feeding itself, and all that good stuff. But that's the hammer forward. Now, when I push this lever down again, watch as the hammer's drawn back to the rear and held by the sear. Now the gun is in single action mode. Press it again, and it decocks. Fairly interesting. Now, if you look inside the slide, you'll notice that there are no firing pin safeties. So the hammer being at rest against a live round could potentially be dangerous if the gun were dropped. This gun does not have the internal slide safeties that we would see on modern handguns like the P226. When you pull the trigger on the P226, this plunger right here in front of my index finger is pushed up. Until that is pushed up by the action of pulling the trigger, the firing pin's locked and cannot move. So if the gun is dropped, the firing pin can't go forward under inertia and ignite the primer. So early pistols like this, which were designed in 1938 in this case, didn't have those types of safeties. Apparently they weren't too concerned with it. To reassemble the 38H, you just put the recoil spring over the barrel, line everything up. This is very simple, similar to a PP, PPK, Makarov, other handguns like that. Set it back onto its slide rails, wiggle it around a little bit, and it'll go forward. Now all you have to do is push this tab up, and the gun is reassembled and ready for use. The handguns, this is a war finish. You can tell that it's just a kind of a rushed blue job on it. It does have a manual safety, so in the single action mode, if that safety is enabled, the trigger cannot be pulled. If I decock it and put it on safe, still the trigger cannot be pulled. So that's kind of an interesting feature, that added safety. I'm not an advocate of those types of safeties, but it's interesting that's on the gun. So again, a wartime finish, blue job. The original grips are Bakelite. It's very rare that you'll find them in very good condition. They typically cracked, especially if people got overzealous in tightening the screws on the grips. But it's a very interesting handgun from World War II, and probably one of my favorite Second World War pistols. This gun does bear the marks of Nazi Germany. On this side of the frame, there is a Nazi era German acceptance proof mark on the gun. The ammunition that we're shooting is the Fiocchi. It's a 73 grain ball round, and seems to be running pretty fine out of the 38H. Have 8 rounds loaded into its magazine. You can see that the magazine is windowed. Insert it into the grip of the gun. I want to show you guys this too, by the way. I'm going to go ahead and chamber a live round. I'm going to leave it in the semi-automatic, why do I keep calling it semi-automatic? The single action mode. I'm going to put the safety on. I'm going to drop the magazine out of the gun, put that in my pocket. Now I'm going to take the safety off. I'm going to pull the trigger, and nothing happens. That's the magazine safety at work. You can also see the loaded chamber indicator protruding from the rear of the slide. I'm going to go ahead and put the magazine back into the gun, leave it in single action mode, and then I have a challenge target downrange. This is one of their paper holder targets. It just works with a 1x4, or I'm sorry, by a 1x2, and you just stick it in the ground, stomp it in the ground, then you can put paper targets up. And so we're going to see how well this little guy shoots. It has very mild recoil, and see how well it shoots here at about 7 or 8 yards. Ooh, and we did get one malfunction. It's not uncommon with these old guns to see these types of malfunctions. Now what's interesting is oftentimes, which I've done for this pistol that's just not here yet, but oftentimes you'll be able to find new springs from Wolf Spring Company. And just about every one of my classic World War II era guns, I've been able to replace the war production springs, which are generally pretty poor quality. You will notice when I took the gun apart that the recoil spring was kind of bent and not straight. That will cause the gun to malfunction. My PP, for example, simply wouldn't function with its original recoil spring in it because it was of such poor quality and had degraded so much over the years. This pistol's malfunction is likely the result of a similar problem, the spring being bad. That was the last round of the magazine. So once I get my Wolf spring kit, I should be able to get my little 38H back up and running again. But that's the first malfunction we had with it this afternoon. Let's go ahead and fire that one last round off if I can find my magazine. Because of the magazine safety, I need to have the magazine. I dropped it into my pocket along with my phone, a box of ammunition, and a flashlight. All right. Put that one last little round in there. Load her up. And that's it. Guys, if you'd like to support us directly here at the Military Arms Channel, the best possible way to do that is to become a patron supporter. At Patreon, you'll get behind-the-scenes information. You'll see blog posts that are original and only available to our Patreon members. And also, it's become a buyer's club of sorts where we've blown out some incredibly cool stuff at extremely low prices, things like pre-band Colts for $699 just for our patrons. So if you'd like to support us, please swing by patreon.com/militaryarms and become a supporter at the Patreon page. We greatly appreciate you guys and everything that you do for us and helping us continue to go forward with the channel. I got the magazine apart for the 38H, but keep in mind a lot of the World War II magazines for 32 caliber pistols weren't really designed to be field stripped. This one is, but you can see that the magazine spring is extremely weak on the gun, which is why it's having the last round failures. It doesn't matter if we put 4 rounds in the magazine or 8 rounds. That last round, the magazine follower just can't keep up with the slide velocity. So hopefully I'm able to find another magazine spring for this little guy. Again, that's just one of the downsides to to owning and shooting some of the classics. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed coming out this afternoon to do a little bit of shooting with the 38H, which was manufactured during World War II in Germany by J P Sauer Sons. And in 1979, of course, they merged with Sig, which was a Swiss company, and together as Sig Sauer, they produced the P220, which was one of the first Sig products on the US market, if not the first, which evolved into the P226, which wound up in the military trials for the M9 service pistol, but then ultimately wound up becoming the Mk12 service pistol that the US Navy adopted. I love the history of guns. That's one of my primary driving forces, and some of you may say that I'm connecting too many dots, drawing the lines between the 38H to the P226, but there's just too many similarities for me personally to ignore, so that's my opinion and I'm sticking with it. Guys, if you have any questions, do try to ask those questions down below. It is really me that sticks around and answers those questions for the first couple of days after a video goes live. It's not somebody else, but also I do invite you to come by and check out our online website, which is coppercustom.com. I think it's the best commercial online retail site out there, bar none, but you guys be the judge. You just swing by, check it out. It's the best way to support us here at the Military Arms Channel. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for all those years of support, and we'll talk to you guys soon. I wonder if this thing's drop safe.